I 34F strongly feel my husband 37 meters hasn't forgiven my past affair and no longer loves me. Story 1. I've been with my husband for almost 15 years, married 11 of them, and we have 2 young boys together. The reasons for stepping outside of my marriage has nothing to do with my husband, and it has nothing to do with the way I feel about him. I cheated for my own selfish reasons that I deeply regret every day. Some point after I turned 30 I felt bored with my life, kinda sad that I spent my 20s either in a committed relationship or raising 2 kids. Ending up as just another stay-at-home mom also kinda bugged me. Instead of bringing this up with my husband, I instead looked for the excitement outside of my marriage. I don't think the details are that important, just that he was an acquaintance in town that we'd known for a couple of years. It lasted for around 7 months but got physical for the last 4. My husband found out when he got suspicious of my behavior, although at the point he found out it had been over for a couple of weeks. For the next month or so lots of arguments occurred, apologies on my part, not sleeping in the same bed, threats of divorce, telling me it was over, etc. After it boiled down, we sat down to talk it through and come to the conclusion this wasn't enough to tear us apart, that we'd get through it and a time would come where it'd seem like a distant memory. I suggested marriage counseling but he refused at every turn, stating I don't want anyone knowing my business, I don't care if it's a stranger or not. Fast for 2 years to now and our relationship feels completely different compared to before my affair. Our time lived took a while to get going again after the affair, but it's never been the same. It never feels passionate or as loving as it used to. Has completely stopped all forms of PDA, which even friends of ours have commented on. Little moments like cuddling on the sofa tends to happen only occasionally now, and it's never for too long before he'll move away. He puts off date night as much as possible. When sleeping in bed has almost always got his back turned to me, and just in general his whole aura has changed. I don't feel like he's cold towards me, just that Terry's something missing. One of the things that's been bugging me this whole year is back in January he had an endoscopy performed as he was having very bad stomach pains, which is very worrying because his dad died at 30 of bowel cancer and stomach cancer runs in his family. I didn't even find out all this until days later, which has bugged me like crazy. Thankfully he had ulcers and has been treated for it. The fact that I know Hess terrified anytime he gets stomach pains and panics anytime Hess in a hospital, but decided to go through it all on his own really hurts me. He didn't even tell me he had stomach pains, and the week leading up to him decided to get checked out, which shows me I've lost something major inside of him. No one in our personal lives knows any of this, so I have no one to seek advice from. I'm not sure what kind of advice I'm seeking, so anything is much appreciated. Thank you. Redditor's reactions. Redditor 1. Fast for 2 years to now and our relationship feels completely different compared to before my affair. Not surprised. I don't feel like he's cold towards me, just that Terry's something missing. Trust is what is missing. Your marriage is damaged goods and you're the one who broke it. I've lost something major inside of him. You're no longer his partner. The most basic rule of a relationship is to be each other's most ardent defender. You are useless in that role because you've shown him that not only are you not loyal to the marriage or loyal to him, you've actively endangered the home of your sons. A man will come back from a lot, but not from the knowledge that he has chosen the wrong mother for his children. Redditor 2. He has possibly made the decision to stay with you for his children, to keep the family unit together until they are grown. He wants to at least give the illusion of a happy childhood for them. Your cheating has changed his feelings for you in a fundamental sense, and you are no longer the priority in his life. I imagine he will end the marriage when the kids are grown and move on to the next phase of his life. I guess he has nobody to talk to about what happened and feels a great deal of shame and embarrassment, and his reaction is a coping mechanism. As for his medical procedure, he didn't tell you because he doesn't think you really care for him, and he just doesn't trust you enough to confide in with his fears anymore. You are a wife in name only because you failed to live up to that job description. It's the price of betrayal. Story 2. I had been seeing a girl for 3 years and it was wonderful. I couldn't believe I had found someone so perfect for me. We were living together for most of this time, but we ended up being apart for a half of a year toward the end for reasons unrelated to the relationship. Despite her being in a different state, things were still as good as ever. We made a few trips to see one another, and I thought that things were actually building up, the relationship was getting better and better. Then there was a period for a few months where she seemed to become distant. I feared the worst but assumed I was being paranoid. This girl was far too emotionally connected to me for there to be anything else going on. So I thought. I decided that I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I let this slip away over something so silly as the distance between us. Even thinking that it could somehow evaporate seemed silly, we were just way too close. I acted out of paranoia nevertheless. I called her and told her I wanted her to move back in with me, and that I couldn't stand for us to be apart any longer, and that I felt us drifting. I can't explain how horrible the following moment was. I had never heard her so sad. She was mortified and I could tell. Before she said anything, she told me I'd hang up and never speak to her again. I told her that wasn't going to happen. Maybe that prepared me. At that point I assumed cheating, but in the back of my head I was thinking she had maybe gotten a disease or something. It was in her wording, I spoiled everything forever or something like that. It felt like an eternity. I was waiting for her to tell me she had HIV. That's when she told me that she was months into a pregnancy that wasn't my doing. My heart sunk. I knew that the entire future we had always planned was gone. I told her everything would be fine and that I loved her, and that accidents happen. I asked for just a few details. How far along she was, and if she was being healthy. I then told her not to worry, she'd hear from me again, but that I had to go. Afterward, I went back and looked at our phone and email history to try and pinpoint the day that she did this. Assuming it was only once and with one person. The worst part was that she cheated on me when everything seemed fine. We had talked that day and had a hilarious chain of emails. It was such betrayal. Believe me, it hurt. The seriousness of a pregnancy too. This wasn't just a BL job. She was carrying some other guy's kid. Like what was my dream was merely some other asshole's accident. After all this time, I still can't avoid crying when talking about the details of it. When I called her back, I told her she was forgiven. I was honest and told her that I was hurt and that I can't trust her anymore, but I wasn't cruel. She knew how hurt I was, but I think she was hurting much worse. Both of our dreams were shattered, but at least I didn't need to live with thinking it was my fault. I'll admit I had some horrible feelings and thought about some horrible things I'd like to say, but I just had no desire to be vengeful. When you love someone, you don't want revenge, you want understanding. I was just sad. This all happened a few years ago. For the sake of brevity, I'll sum this up by saying she had her baby and he is wonderful. I stayed with her as a friend through the entire ordeal. We are still close friends today. I am so happy that I didn't react harshly. She and I are not together, that trust is broken. However, I retained a friend, had a great life lesson, as did she. I also got to practice love when it wasn't easy. Though it makes me sad to think about the details of this event, I'm very happy that I still have this person in my life. I'm very happy I wasn't mean to her when she was at her lowest point. I'd regret that today. Edit. This is the one comment I will respond to, because I feel there needs to be some context. The moment she told me this information, it was over. She knew it and I knew it. The conversation was not going to be about hurt feelings and bruised egos, because now I was talking to someone who was pregnant with a child. I talked to her the way I would talk to any friend who was in a similar kind of crisis. It wasn't about me or us, it was about her and the baby. The worst thing I could have done was make her have any resentment around her pregnancy. It was important for the sake of this baby that from the get-go there were no hard feelings involving his existence. Furthermore, she was already beating herself up really badly, like really badly. I was worried. Even a half-hearted cry for help kind of event could have been detrimental to the health of the baby. She needed not to hear she was forgiven, but hear the words that would be said if she really was forgiven. She needed to be given a little grace. No, she never said anything to hint she would hurt herself either, and she never held me emotionally captive. Once she was stable, I removed myself from the situation until after the pregnancy was over, and she was fine with that. She never played any mind tricks. I'm not a doormat, though I really don't take offense to being called one in this case. She turned into a desperate friend at that moment, so I had to respond accordingly. Protecting my pride was the last thing I was concerned about. I knew she was in a worse place, so it was my choice to do my part in making sure she and the baby got through this okay. I'm a strong person and I recovered just fine. My little brother gets walked all over by meaningless women because his life is controlled by his penis. There are other people in this thread who have taken the girl back. I know doormats. I'm no doormat. Someone also said I'm being taken advantage of. I promise you I'm not. At least no more than any friendship is a pair of people taking advantage of each other. I quickly drew boundaries. Yes, her and I are friends, but I've since moved on and I've been in a few relationships that have been normal and healthy. Despite getting a bit sad when retelling the story, it's really not much of a big deal at all anymore. I wouldn't even be able to guess in what way I'm being taken advantage of. No more replies from me. Thanks everyone. I've loved reading your comments, and I still am. In case it isn't completely clear, I am not in a relationship with this girl anymore. There seem to be a lot of commenters that missed that. Also, I fixed the word here to here. Sorry. Redditor's reactions. Redditor 1, I caught her cheating and forgave her. Was a big man, handled it maturely. Was understanding. Then she admitted to me, a year or so later, another affair she was having. Once more, I handled that like a pro. Listened to her concerns. Talked through it. Really understood where she was coming from. Later, we got married. That was great. Until out of the blue, she left me for someone with whom she was cheating on me. If I could go back and change the decision to forgive her and be understanding and listen to her, I would without the slightest hesitation. I sure as hell wouldn't stay with her, knowing what I know now. Since then, I've had a zero-tolerance policy for it, and have been much happier. The few times it's been an issue, I haven't looked back, and many years on now, I've never regretted it. To boil it down, when you have standards, you attract a better quality of person. Redditor 2, my GF got pregnant. Now I'm in my 40s. Married to her for over 20 years. Couple of children. When first child was 11 over 10 years ago, my wife told me I was not the biological father. I cannot express the hurt I felt that day and still feel to this day. I have tried to forgive, I cannot. It has even affected my relationship with my child over 20 now and who does not know. I am now getting a divorce, many reasons, but my failure to forgive is top of list. There are no life lessons to be taken from this. We each react and behave differently. Frankly, I consider myself a failure. It will not be easy for me or my wife. Human sexuality still baffles me. Time invokes large emotions. Be careful with it.